Today, I wrote a letter to Canada's Lobbying Commissioner after reviewing the situation of Justin Trudeau's appointment of his new de facto Finance Minister, Mark Carney. Look, this is incredibly concerning when we've seen what happened in the hours after Justin Trudeau appointed Mr. Carney to this position. We saw that Mr. Carney's self-described good friend, the head of Telesat, received a $2+ billion loan. We've seen the announcement of discussions that Brookfield, Mark Carney's, the company that he's the chair of, now being able to enter into discussions with the federal government for a $50 billion pension scheme, so giving them access to more than 10 billion Canadian pension dollars. And we know that changes to mortgage rules with Brookfield owning Canada's largest private mortgage insurer is going to benefit that company, and that's reflected, of course, in the 6-month stock price high that was seen following that announcement. Now, we've asked the Liberals these questions. We've asked if this has been reviewed by the Lobbying Commissioner. And at the Ethics Committee, we've asked for Mr. Carney to appear at committee. And we'll be taking up that matter again today because the Liberals would not let it pass during previous discussions. And so perhaps today they will allow for some transparency to happen and for Mr. Carney to be called to testify at the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. But for now, we're going to look to an independent officer of Parliament, Canada's Commissioner of Lobbying, to review these allegations and other that are outlined in my letter.
So we have asked the Liberals if they cleared Mr. Carney's appointment and fundraising for the Liberal Party with the Lobbyist Commissioner, and they haven't answered. The Office of the Lobbying Commissioner and the Lobbying Act was put in place to address a major influence scandal of the last Liberal government. And frankly, this new situation stinks. The head of a $1 trillion everything corporation having unfettered access to Liberal cabinet ministers while fundraising for their party, while his company reportedly asked for billions of tax dollars. The Office of the Lobbying Commissioner, it exists for a reason, and we've asked her to look into the situation because there's a lot to suggest that she should.
Après 9 ans de ce gouvernement libéral, la corruption semble devenir une monnaie courante au sein de ce gouvernement. On l'a vu aujourd'hui, la Chambre est paralysée pour 2 questions de privilèges parce que le gouvernement enfreint les règles à plusieurs reprises. Et aujourd'hui, mon collègue a écrit à la commissaire aux lobbyistes pour faire toute la lumière sur les relations qui existent entre Mark Carney, le ministre des Finances fantôme du gouvernement Trudeau, et son gouvernement. On sait que M. Carney a été nommé grand chef pour conseiller M. Trudeau sur les questions financières, au même moment où sa compagnie demande des milliards de dollars au gouvernement. On pense que la commissaire au lobbying doit faire toute la lumière. On a demandé aux libéraux si des questions avaient été posées à la commissaire concernant ce dossier, ce conflit d'intérêts qui nous apparaît flagrant à première vue. Les libéraux ont refusé de répondre. Les libéraux ont tout fait pour tenter d'empêcher Mark Carney de paraître et de témoigner en comité. Donc, aujourd'hui, on va continuer. On a écrit à la commissaire aux lobbyistes pour faire toute la lumière sur cette relation entre Mark Carney et le gouvernement libéral. On sait qu'un conflit d'intérêts, c'est quand tu peux avoir accès facilement à des ministres et que ces ministres se sentent un peu redevables. Alors, si M. Carney fait des levées de fonds, du financement pour les libéraux, on peut s'attendre à ce que les libéraux soient contents et soient donc redevables à M. Carney de faire ce financement-là. Donc, c'est un des aspects que devra éclairer les Canadiens, la commissaire aux lobbyistes. Merci.
Do you have any evidence that he actually does lobbying for Brookfields, right? Because that's the key determinant. As you know, there's a certain rule of percentage of your time that you spend lobbying that triggers the rules, right?
Yeah, and this is exactly the kind of question that, of course, the government's had the opportunity to provide an answer to up to this point. They have failed to be transparent, and so this is why it's going to be reviewed by the independent officer of Parliament, so she can apply the test that you described and determine if there's been a contravention of the Act. But this transparency is important. Look, after 9 years of Justin Trudeau and his NDP Liberal government, we've seen the disregard that they have for the rules that are enforced by our other independent officers of Parliament, like the Ethics Commissioner as an example, with the Prime Minister twice being found guilty of breaking ethics laws himself. We see that they place these rules to the side when making their decisions, and that's why it's important that we have an independent review of it by the Lobbying Commissioner.
Do you think that as for taking over all of the oxygen in the House, that there is good work being done right behind you?
Look, the House is seized with multiple issues of Liberal corruption that actually don't even include the issue that we've raised today, this latest issue. But the most recent one to seize the House, that's one caused by the Liberals allowing for hundreds of millions of dollars in dozens of conflicts of interest to flow inappropriately to Liberal insiders under a Liberal-appointed chair who was found guilty of breaking Canada's Conflict of Interest Act. A majority of members of the House of Commons did vote ordering the government to turn over its documents to the RCMP so that they can review them and take appropriate decisions. But the government is in violation of that order as ruled by the Speaker of the House, and that matter can be dispensed with very quickly. The government simply has to follow the order of a majority of members that were democratically elected to the House of Commons, which they're not doing right now. The other issue that is yet to be dealt with in the House is that of the other Randy saga, where we have the minister from Edmonton Centre, Justin Trudeau's Liberal minister from Edmonton Centre, Randy Boissonnault, his business partner who he was continuing to do business with, or there's evidence that, contrary to what Mr. Boissonnault claims, that he was continuing to direct his business that he had a 50% stake in while he was serving in Justin Trudeau's cabinet. His business partner, the Speaker ruled, did not provide the evidence and information that was requested him by a parliamentary committee. And it's very simple. Well, the key question was, who is the other Randy? Because the allegation that's been made by some is that it's Justin Trudeau's minister from Edmonton. We need clarity on that, because directing one's business from the cabinet table, of course, is a contravention of the law. And it's also inappropriate that that company, well, Mr. Boissonnault owned 50%, would have been receiving contracts from the Government of Canada, which we learned through a belated release of information from Elections Canada. So these are issues dealing with Liberal corruption that have seized the House, and they're effectively obstructing their own agenda, their own productivity. They can't get out of their own way. And this matter is one that hopefully we can get some sunshine on so as to disinfect it and restore Canadians' confidence.
Yesterday, the Conservative MPs voted in favour of a Bloc motion calling for new seniors' benefits that would have the impact, if implemented, of giving $3 billion a year more to seniors. Does that mean that the Conservatives are promising to implement that if you form government?
Look, the number one thing that we've been talking about every day, and we're going to talk about it again today in just a few moments, and that's that the economic misery that's been caused by 9 years of Justin Trudeau and his NDP Liberal government, their inflationary spending is having the effect of vaporizing the savings, the pensions of Canadians. Canadian seniors are now using food banks in record numbers. The best way that we can address that in the shortest order is what we've committed to do, and that's to axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. And the only way we can do that is by having a carbon tax election, so a common-sense Conservative government can save Canadians from the economic vandalism being perpetrated by Justin Trudeau. Thanks very much for your questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to talk briefly about what has been going on in the House of Commons for the past week. For Canadians, it's important that we get back to debating the issues that matter to them, and particularly when it comes to advancing important legislation. However, what's happening right now is something that every single Canadian should be extremely alarmed about. The Conservative Party of Canada has put forward a motion that would blur the lines of the independence of our democratic institutions, notably that between the legislative branches of government and the judicial branches of government. Every branch of government, with the exception of the legislature, is bound by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And now the House of Commons and parliamentarians have extraordinary powers and extraordinary privileges that they get to exercise, should be in the support of democracy. But what we are seeing the Conservatives do right now is attempt to use those extraordinary powers and extraordinary privileges to get around judicial oversight and to basically trample the charter rights of Canadians. They have the power, and it is confirmed, and Parliament has extraordinary powers, to be able to compel documents. That is something that is agreed upon. But what they are doing for the first time, unprecedented in Canadian history, is compelling documents not for the use of parliamentarians, but to give directly to our federal police, to the RCMP. Now, there's a reason why the RCMP normally and have the responsibility to get a search warrant or to get a subpoena or to go to a judge to get information from Canadians, because they are bound to protect the charter rights of Canadians, and if they're going to suspend those rights, they have to have the authority to do that. But what the Conservatives are trying to do is to say that they are going to use the extraordinary privilege and power of Parliament to go around those very necessary and correct judicial oversight mechanisms, to go around the charter-protected rights of Canadians. And now they are saying, oh, well, we're not telling the police what to do here, but we're giving them the documents. Well, that is completely inappropriate, and it is a complete abuse of power, and it is something that should not happen in a democracy. And Canadians need to be alarmed that if they are going to do this in this instance, what else are they going to do? They have shown time and time again that when it comes to the rights of Canadians, it's not a top priority for them. And for me, as a citizen in this country, I don't want to live in a country where politicians can direct the police on what to do, where they can go and suspend the charter rights of Canadians because they have the right to do so. The real question here is, just because you have the right to do something, should you actually do it? And Canadians need to be aware of what the Conservatives are putting forward, because as we have seen time and time again, it might not be your rights today, but it sure as heck might be your rights tomorrow.
You made this argument to the Speaker, and the Speaker disagreed with you. He sided with the opposition, and so now that's why we're in this standoff.
No, he agreed that it was a case of privilege with the opposition. But he took my argument and he took my suggestion to send this to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, because this is so unprecedented and, quite frankly, dangerous precedent that is being put forward. And he made it very clear to Andrew Scheer, the House Leader of the Conservatives, that he had a specific motion that he would allow the Conservatives to bring forward, which would be to send this matter for further study to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, precisely because this has never happened before in the history. And he recognizes, and we take him and we recognize as well, that the House of Commons has extraordinary powers, and they should have those extraordinary powers. But never before has the House of Commons asked for documents not to be used for its own purposes and for its own study, but rather to be used to be sent to a third party, and in this case, the police.
What's the current standoff? Do all parties disagree with going to the Procedure and House Affairs Committee?
No, I think the Conservatives are the only ones that are debating right now in the House of Commons. We would like to see debate collapse on this. We think this is a very important conversation that needs to happen. I think that the legal community, that police community, because this is compromising police independence. In fact, the RCMP and the Auditor General both sent letters to the House of Commons outlining their extreme discomfort with this measure and the inappropriateness of what the House of Commons is asking, being led by the Conservative Party of Canada. Alors, en français, c'est que maintenant, les Canadiens doivent être extrêmement préoccupés pour ce que les conservateurs sont en train de proposer que la Chambre des communes fait. C'est un moment qu'ils décident de détruire l'indépendance entre la section législative et la section judiciaire de notre démocratie. Ils veulent utiliser les pouvoirs extraordinaires du Chambre des communes pour éviter et oublier les droits des Canadiens qui sont protégés par la Charte. La Chambre des communes a des pouvoirs extraordinaires, et c'est clair, mais il y a une question sur les limites de ces pouvoirs, parce qu'ils ont le droit de demander des documents, ça c'est clair, pour leur propre usage. Mais pour la première fois dans l'histoire du Canada, la Chambre de communes est en train de demander des documents, pas pour le travail des parlementaires, mais pour donner aux polices, sans les protections des choix, des droits et libertés de la Charte. Et c'est quelque chose que chaque Canadien doit être extrêmement préoccupé. Parce que même si ce n'est pas ton droit dans ce moment, qu'est-ce qui va faire les conservateurs ne pas chercher vos droits après ça? C'est une question de l'indépendance de la police. C'est une question de la protection de chaque droit de chaque Canadien. Et à mon avis, je n'ai pas de confiance avec mes droits ni les droits de n'importe quel Canadien avec ce parti conservateur et ce qu'il fait maintenant parce qu'il veut utiliser les pouvoirs extraordinaires de cette place en arrière de moi pour que les droits des Canadiens ne sont pas respectés.
Is the impact of this that you cannot, or the government cannot bring in the capital gains motion or any other government bills because of this?
Correct. Until privilege debate ends, there's no opportunity to debate important legislation for Canadians. And let's be very clear. This is the Conservatives trying to muck up Parliament. But I can tell you that Liberal members of Parliament, NDP members of Parliament, Bloc members of Parliament are here to work for Canadians. Conservative members of Parliament are here for their own political, personal objectives, and they don't care what they do to Canadians in the meantime. And that is something that should be extremely alarming to all of us. Thank you very much. Merci.
From the get-go, I mean, we initially came up with the 10% for over 74 years old, and there was many of us thought we should have done something for everybody at the time and not kind of divide, you know, the seniors into two groups. So, you know, I mean, I think I have a record of, you know, challenging my government and, you know, opposing my government and things like that. So for me, it was a signal to my government that we need to, you know, come forward with something that is equitable for all seniors. So it's a little nudge, light a fire under you know, some of the ministers to hopefully come up with something positive.
Interesting. I mean, the motion still passed, but
yeah.
do you get the sense that the government is open to the idea that they could actually move forward with this idea maybe in the budget or in the fall economic statement?
I mean, you know, maybe in some way, shape, and form. It may not be exactly everything maybe the Bloc wants, but I think, you know, there's certain different ways. Maybe it's something with the GIS or, you know, the limit that seniors can actually earn without being taxed and things like that we can do forward. But in the end, it was just a gesture or what would I say? From us, it was a signal to our government that, you know, we wanted movement on this 2-3 years back, and we're just saying, hey, we're still here and we still want that movement, and the party across wants that, so we're going to support it.
So it seems like there was a debate at the time, I believe it was in 2021, that the OAS was raised. So was it discussed at the time to, you know, have it for all people 65 and older instead of 70? I
mean, it was discussed, but I mean, you know, the rationale was, as we know, we wanted to support over 75 because, you know, seniors are living longer, they're running out of money, they have more health needs. So, you know, we understood that, but to offer it to one segment and not the other was divisive, and obviously, you know, it upset a lot of other seniors. So when we seen the Bloc come forth with that motion, in principle, we supported it. We stood up and said, hey, we're going to support it. And, you know, I'm proud of our government. They allow us to do things like that.
And just finally, I want to hear what you think of the Conservatives supporting this, because they also voted for the bill in second reading.
Yeah.
They say they want to fix the budget and make a bunch of cuts, but at the same time, you know, they supported an extra $16 billion. So,
sure.
What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, you know, wonders never cease. You know, I think a lot of us were surprised to see our so-called Conservative colleagues supporting that bill, but I mean, obviously they stood up and supported it, so I guess they're going to be willing to do something for all seniors too.
Okay, thank you very much for
you're
stopping.
welcome. Yeah, no problem.
How do you feel about C-64 making out of, I guess, Out of committee.
Out of committee
Yeah.
and Senate, pardon me.
I think this is a really important step. You know, the Senate has been sort of looking at the bill and considering it, and made a decision not to amend it and send it back to the House unamended. That's hugely helpful because you know, people need these drugs. We need to make sure that diabetes patients get their medicine, and that women have access to the contraceptives they need to have autonomy over their body. So there's really urgent need for these drugs, and I think the Senate's feeling that urgency, and it's reflected in the fact now that it's moving to the last stages unamended, which means that we can get to signing deals and getting to the hard work of actually getting these medications to people.
Okay, and when do you think it's going to be actually make it finally through the Senate?
Well, the Senate has indicated that October 10th is the date that they're targeting, and given the fact that that there is not a sorry, somebody's interrupting. Sorry, I'll restart. So the Senate has indicated that October 10th is the date they expect to come out of the Senate. Now that it hasn't been amended, I expect that they'll be able to keep that timetable, which will put us in a strong position to be able to sign agreements with provinces and territories. As I've said before, we've used this intervening period of time over the summer to have conversations with my provincial and territorial colleagues to get ready for those agreements, and we're anxious to get those signed and get drugs flowing.
I know that the opposition Conservatives have said that this is an opportunity once it makes it through the Senate for you guys to prorogue Parliament and you know, just keep yourselves in power for a couple of more months. What do you make of that?
Well, the Conservatives say a lot of things. They said dental care wasn't real. They said that nobody would sign up for it. And of course, over 800,000 people have gotten care. So I think you know, they seem to think that the job of the official opposition is to be the prognosticators of doom and to be in a constant state of feeding conspiracy. Our focus is on getting things done for Canadians, and we have a lot more work to do, not just in pharmacare. You know, we just announced the autism framework and strategy. We're going to be tackling safe long-term care, and we have important work to do there. So, and we have, of course, our Connected Care Act. You know, data saves lives. Right now, we have a very fragmented data system. That legislation that's in the House is extremely important. So we have a lot of things that we continue to need to get through the House and done for Canadians, and that's our focus.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.